Okay, so that was kind of funny. I actually started this live like 10 minutes ago, but then I got a call from Kess, who's like my social media guru, and she called me, and I thought, uh-oh, there must be something wrong with the sound or with something. So I shut it off and then I deleted it, so I have to start all over again. But that's okay. That's okay, because this time I will not forget number 3. All right, so, and if I'm standing funny, it's because I was trying some advanced yoga poses this morning and didn't go so well. I'm a little old for the advanced yoga poses, and it's bothering me to sit, so I'm standing. All right, so I posted in my Food Freedom Support Group, which, by the way, is an awesome group. I asked them, what is your major, most awful, most difficult frustration with food? And there were some really great frustrations that they wrote out. And I'm going to be answering those over the next couple of months in blog posts and in lives and stuff. But I really liked this one that I'm actually going to read to you because I think she worded it perfectly, and it seemed to really resonate with everybody in there. There were a lot of comments on it. She said, knowing all the right things to do, but just not doing them because my immediate comfort seems more important than long-term goals that seem too hard to ever achieve. Does that sound familiar? It totally rang familiar with me. And so what she's saying is, why can I delay gratification with money and with kids and with life, but I can't delay gratification with a donut? That's a good question, right? So we know what we should be doing. We know that we should be eating healthy, but then somebody puts it in front of our face and boop, we nosedive. Very, very normal, very common. And I'm going to tell you why, and then I'm going to give you a few tips to make it a little easier. Because guess what? We do have the power and we can control it. I talk a lot about the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex, and I'm not going to get into all that today because that would take a whole nother webinar or 2 or 3 or 7. So today I'm just going to say adult part of your brain is the prefrontal cortex, child part of your brain is the limbic system. And this limbic system back here, it's responsible for keeping you alive. That's its job. It has to do it. So when you're getting these cravings and these urges, be grateful, because guess what? Your brain is working. It's a good thing. So the modus operandi of any kind of bender, a food bender, a drink bender, a whatever bender, it's always the same. And this is how it goes, like literally, only it happens in about a minutia of a second. So first, there's a trigger. Whatever the trigger is, it could be an event, it could be an emotion, it could be a person, a place, a smell, whatever it is that triggers it. All of a sudden, your limbic system goes, woohoo, party time, we're going to get fed, we're going to release some dopamine, we're going to feel so good, we love that feeling, yes. And then your prefrontal cortex, the adult part of your brain, comes in and says, wait a minute, that's probably not a great idea because your doctor told you have high blood pressure and you're not fitting into your pants anymore, so you maybe shouldn't indulge like that. And then the limbic part of the system, the kid, comes in with some kind of manipulation, some kind of excuse. It could, for example, say, well, here's the thing, prefrontal cortex, you already ate a donut this morning, so you might as well eat another donut or 10 or 17, right? And guess what? You can start again tomorrow, so let's go ahead and indulge. So that's the kid brain. The adult brain comes back and it has a choice. It's right there that it has the power to decide one of 2 things. It can turn around and walk away from the kitchen, or it can say, well, my mouth is too full of donut to say anything. One of those 2 things. We always have the choice. And the key is to try to listen to the conversation, to slow down enough to listen to that conversation going on so that you can have the choice. And that's what mindfulness is all about. And again, that's another webinar. Today we are discussing how to delay gratification even when you know better. Okay, so that's kind of what's happening when that food pops up in front of you. And there's some tips that I'm going to give you that will make it a little bit easier. Tip number 1. Hey, Cass. Hey. So I can't see the comments this time, so yay. Send me some questions. So tip number 1, don't let yourself get hungry. Super important, because if you're hungry, this limbic system, Sorry, got another call. This limbic system, which is responsible for keeping you alive, it goes crazy because it thinks you're starving it. And so you know what it does? It comes and it releases these chemicals in the front part of your brain that kind of paralyzes this part of your brain, and then the limbic system takes over. If you think about it, it's like having teenagers. They want to throw a party. They want to have fun. They want to play. And the parent says no. So they lock the parent in the closet. That's what your limbic system does with this prefrontal cortex. It locks it in the closet so it can party all night long. So it's important to keep yourself fed. I tell my clients to eat every 2 to 3 hours. Personally, I think that's the best way to go. I have them balance their carbs and their proteins. Try to stick with the low glycemic index foods because it keeps you satisfied for longer. So that's kind of the key to that. Water's important too. Don't forget your water. And then along the same line, number 2 is that you make sure that you're actually getting nourishment, because a lot of the foods that we have these days, there's no nourishment in them. Think of Top Ramen. What's in Top Ramen? Like, I don't even know, cardboard or something. If you're not properly nourishing your food, this limbic system, it still thinks you're starving it. Even if you're eating 7 Twinkies a day, it thinks it's starving because it's not getting the proper nutrients. It's smart. This thing is smart. So again, it comes in, it locks this in the closet, and it parties all night long. So number 1, you have to make sure that you're not letting yourself get hungry. Number 2, you have to make sure that you are getting the proper nutrients, which is a whole other webinar or 2 or more that I will have to give one of these days. Number 3, and this is super important, you need to be kind to yourself. Because get this kid back here, this brat brain, that's what I call it in my book, this kid brain, it only can communicate in the way that it's been taught. And so generally speaking, when it's throwing out cravings and urges, if it's not because you're hungry, it's because it's trying to tell you something. All it can do is scream at you. It's like an alarm clock. It can just burp, burp, burp. It can't jump off the dresser and force you to do stuff. All it can do is scream. Generally speaking, it's trying to tell you something. So if it's not telling you you're hungry, it could be telling you that you're tired, could be telling you that you're overstimulated, you're overworked, you need some rest. Whatever it is, you need to stop long enough to listen and try to figure out what that thing is really trying to tell you. So if you can reduce your stress level, if you can make sure that you're getting enough sleep, if you can be kind to yourself, it's going to reduce those cravings significantly. Not that they're not going to come, they might still come, but if you're practicing number 1 and 2 and 3 together, and you learn this mindfulness stuff, you try to listen to those 2 voices, you're going to be in really good shape. And we're not going to be perfect. None of us are going to be perfect. Okay, this is totally off track, but I'm going to say it anyways. Hey, Megan. Oh, how do you help your teenager from overeating? You can lock them in the closet, Kes. That's what I did. You know, one time I duct taped my boys together because they were fighting, and I made them sing Love at Home. That was fun. Okay, I'll answer your question afterwards. It'll give me time to ponder it anyways. Okay, totally off track, but super important. I read this book, The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. It's an awesome book. And he talks about being above the line and being below the line. Well, being above the line, that's somebody that is emotionally intelligent, takes personal responsibility, no drama. It's an adult. It's a mature adult, easy to deal with, right? Below the line, that's somebody that plays the victim, somebody that has low emotional intelligence, somebody that gets involved in all sorts of drama, makes it difficult to communicate, right? So he talks about this in terms of leadership, and he said that it's not that a good leader isn't going to go below the line, because it's our natural human carnal tendency to dip below the line and get involved in that juicy neighborhood gossip and get offended when somebody tells us something. It's not that that is never going to happen, but a good leader knows how to recognize it quickly and get back up above the line. That's the important part. My son did that yesterday. I won't go off onto another tangent because I'll forget where I'm even at. Emotional intelligence, above the line living, but it's not that we're never going to be below the line. And it's the same thing physically. Below the line is stuff in our face with the donuts. It's not that we're never going to go there, because we're human, we're natural, we have to eat, and the food tastes yummy. So it's not that we're never going to dip below the line. It's that a healthy person can learn to recognize when they're below the line and quickly make the shift, right? So none of this, I'll start to figure that out. I remember when I started to be able to make the shift above the line the next day. So I would still binge throughout the day, and I'd say, all right, I'm going to start the next day. Whereas before, I was saying I was going to start the next week. So I did that, and then after a while, I kept trying to build up my willpower, and that's a whole nother webinar too. But after a while, I could have like a cookie or something and not go off the deep end, because I could recognize it quickly and shift back above the line. Now I have no idea where I was, so let's review the 3 things that are going to make saying no easier. Number 1, don't let yourself get hungry. Number 2, make sure that the food you are eating actually has nutrients in it. Number 3, be kind to yourself. Reduce your stress, make sure you're getting enough sleep, yada, yada, yada. Okay, the last thing that I wanted to tell you, and I want to say this is probably the biggest of all, but if you let yourself get hungry, that's not good either. So we'll put them as equal. Here it is. If you guys have ever heard Simon Sinek, I think is his name, Simon Sinek's TED Talk on the importance of the why, it's awesome. Go watch it. One of the things that he talks about is this guy named Stanley Pierpont Langley. And Stanley Pierpont Langley was this Harvard professor. He was like the secretary of the Smithsonian, super smart, super powerful. The government gave him a $50,000 bond to go invent this new flying machine. That was kind of the rave back then. It was sort of like, how did he put it? He said it was like the Silicon Valley of the time, like everybody was trying to do it. And so the government, the War Department, gave him $50,000 to go invent this flying machine. So he hired all of the best minds, the smart, educated academics to help him do this. And even the New York Times followed him around everywhere. He was like the popular one. Everyone was cheering him on. Come on, Stanley, build the airplane. Well, then comes in the Wright brothers, Wilbur and Orville from Dayton, Ohio. They had no college education. As a matter of fact, I was reading up on them this morning. They didn't even have high school diplomas. One of them, Wilbur, I think, he dropped out of school when he was a junior. Nobody on their team had college educations either. They were not known. They had no New York Times following them around. They didn't even have any money. They didn't have any grants from the government. They just used whatever they could pull out of their little bike shop to help fund it. Well, we know the ending to the story, right? We have no idea who Stanley Pierpont Langley is, but we do know the Wright brothers because they were the first ones to invent the airplane. So what was the difference? What was the difference between Stanley Pierpont Langley and the Wright brothers? It's all about the why. The Wright brothers, they were working for a cause, for a purpose. They were working blood, sweat, tears, everything. Stanley, on the other hand, he was working for money. Money is not a good motivator. I had to learn that the hard way when I entered into a little bet with my kids and a couple of friends, and we each pitched in $100 to see who could stay on a diet long enough, and I think I lasted 1 day because money is not a good motivator. You have to have a good why. It is so, so, so important. I have one client. She's in her late 60s, and she couldn't get off the couch. When she first called me, she couldn't get off the couch. She couldn't move around. She couldn't walk. She had grandkids. She wanted to play with her grandkids. She lost like 80 pounds, and she went skiing with her grandkids that winter. She had a really strong why. I have another client who he had a heart attack, and he had a bunch of kids and grandkids and a wife, and he didn't want to have another heart attack. He didn't want to die. He wanted to spend time with his family. He lost about 60 pounds. They had great whys. And it's not even about the weight loss. I have another client I've been working with recently who was a terrible binge eater, binged every day, been doing it for years and years and years, tried to go to counseling, couldn't stop. His doctor told him, if you don't stop, you only have 2 years to live. Well, he had cute little kids and a nice wife and a great job. He didn't want to die either. Huge why. I worked with him for 3 weeks. And he doesn't binge anymore. He's starting to lose weight, and he is happy as a clam. And so they all had really strong whys. I work with other clients who want to maybe fit into a dress for a wedding, or maybe want to slip into a new pair of skinny jeans. Those aren't very strong whys, and it might get them to the goal, but they're going to be hard-pressed to keep that weight off. or keep eating healthy for that matter, because they don't have a why that takes them beyond. You need a cause, you need a purpose. We all need a purpose, right? For this reason, I have created a freebie for all of you that I hope you love as much as I loved filling it out. And I'll post the link to grab it at the bottom of the live. It's somewhere on my website with a funky / something after it. So I'll post that so you can have that. And I want you to fill it out, and I want you to post it somewhere where you can see it. Because if you can remind yourself daily of what your why is, well, it's going to make it a lot easier to make good choices, right? When I did this, I posted mine right on the door frame to my bedroom, because my binges, generally speaking, started in the bedroom and then went to the kitchen. So I could see it right there before I actually got into the kitchen, and it helped a ton. So go get my freebie, and while you're there, join my Facebook support group if you haven't yet, because they are awesome, awesome. Okay, questions. Yeah, that's Simon Sinek, I guess. Awesome TED Talk. Kess asks, how do you help your teenager from overeating? You know what? I think it's the same way you help your teenagers do anything, Kessers. I think it's just being a good example. Like, I know Hope and Chloe, they watch me. I try really hard not to talk about how fat I am anymore, and I have good food in the house. And they still, they bring home candy and stuff sometimes, and that's okay. One thing I suggest never, never, never to do is to say something to one of your kids about needing to lose weight, because they will remember that forever, and I'm speaking from experience. So I want to make sure that you guys know not to say anything to them, and just be a good example. That's all. And have good food in the house. And if they're stuffing their face, then, go give them a kiss and tell them you love them and you're glad because they could stand to put on a few pounds. That's what I tell Chloe, which is true. She's a toothpick. So I hope that answered your question. That's, I think, the greatest thing to do. So I'm going to remind you guys to go grab the freebie. I'll put the link there. You're terrific. I love you all. I can't wait to do this again next week, which I will. Not sure what the topic will be. I'll announce it on Monday. Thanks. Bye.